Cowboys and Eagles this week in Week 10. Will the Dallas Cowboys be able to pull off the upset of the century? That's a little dramatic, but we'll bring it all down on this crossover edition of the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to this Locked On crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today is Gino Camilleri from Locked On Eagles. You can follow him on Twitter at GC24_football. But Gino, I want to start with the Eagles side of things. They are the visiting team. My first question to you, big picture, is this Eagles team for real? Like, is this an actual Super Bowl contender? Or do we think it's kind of more of the same as what we saw last year from this Philadelphia team?
It's the Nick Sirianni's amount of his contract amount question, right? Like whatever he's getting paid, that's what it comes down to. Is this head coach a good enough coach to get this team over the hump? Because what failed them in that Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs came down to decision making. And when you're at that important of a game, those decisions matter on the highest level. And what we almost saw last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars was exactly the same story we have seen over the last couple years with Nick Sirianni. The decision-making can ultimately be boom or bust for this team. I think that question is two-pronged, Marcus. I think the talent, I think Kellen Moore's offense, and I think Vic Fangio's defense can get the job done. But Nick Sirianni, how much is he micromanaging things when it comes to the offense? Is he getting these decisions right in the biggest of games? The expectation was always Super Bowl or bust. I still think that is the expectation because right now, outside of Kansas City, who's a world beater in this league, if we're being honest? If there was ever a year that...
Detroit?
Yeah, Detroit, absolutely, without a doubt. And in the NFC, if you get past Detroit, though, any given Sunday, this is the year that you can do it. I think Kansas City is definitely beatable if it came down to it. Now it's still Nick Sirianni-led football team, and I think Cowboys fans know that head coaches can get in the way of talent sometimes, and I think that's frankly what we've seen since the bye week the last couple weeks.
So I wanted to ask you about this team, because when you look at it on paper, they are incredibly talented. Like you look at like the money five positions, quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, pass rusher, like they have all the pieces in place. But when you watch them, you know that it's a good team, but you don't feel like it's a juggernaut. Like there's just something missing with this team. Can you try to explain like what that is? Is that a lack of a killer instinct? Is it the coaching staff? Is it the quarterback not being maybe as dynamic as he once was? What do you think it is to you?
Actually, Jalen has been downright exceptional the last 3 weeks, and I think the dynamic element of the run game has really come back, I would say, twofold over the last couple weeks. And there were questions Lou and I had where we're watching him the first few weeks. We're saying, does he just not able to run anymore? Like, can he just not physically do it? But he's got the confidence back. He really has been dialed in. His completion percentage over expected. His EPA have been through the roof. There's been injuries, but they've been able to kind of get over them because they have the talent at the money five positions, like you're saying. The defense is dialed in. I think it comes down to that lack of killer instinct, like you said. That is a learned trait. I don't know if the guy in charge of this football team can be the guy to show that. And he did that last week against the Jags. They played with their food for 2.5 quarters. For 2.5 quarters, they were just allowing the Jags to stick around. And then all of a sudden, a call goes the wrong way, and it's a fumble 6 to Saquon, and now it's a one-score game. And then you had to have Nakobe Dean win the game for you on the last drive because Trevor Lawrence was putting his team in field position when this game should have been wrapped up after halftime. And I know people are going to say you're being way too hard on Nick Sirianni, but Howie Roseman did his job. The personnel is crushing it this year. Everybody that he signed is working out. You're seeing guys like Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond at the linebacker position play really well, and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are playing exceptional. Vic Fangio was the perfect hire for the personnel grouping that they had there. And now some of these elements that Kellen Moore has really brought to the offense, these under center looks where Jalen Hurts is able to keep defenses on their toes. Over at our show, I like to say, can you make a defense play 12 on 10 with a dynamic Jalen Hurts? When he can get off his platform on those rollout, bootleg play action and allow things to develop downfield, he is a killer. But the guy making the calls, the guy that he's the general of this football team, putting his troops in to the position where they play week in and week out, I've seen enough from him over the last 3 years that it really comes down to him. I've seen these teams, 53 guys, circumvent bad coaching multiple times over the last couple weeks and couple months and couple seasons. So,
well, Gene,
fingers.
I know the feeling, and this is to a lesser degree, but
you're trying to make sense of something that I think we all kind of see, but nobody is outright saying it.
I remember in 2014 and 2016 when the Cowboys had Jason Garrett as their head coach. They won a bunch of games because their roster was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And talent matters a lot in the regular season. It's the difference between winning 12 games and winning 8 games, right? But when you get to the postseason, that's when coaching matters because every team is talented once you get in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why the Cowboys struggled so much in the Jason Garrett era, despite having great talent, is that anytime they got into these playoff games, they were consistently outcoached. I think you're feeling the same way with this current version of the Eagles team. Now, maybe Nick Sirianni is viewed as a better coach than Jason Garrett. Totally understandable. But if they have to go play the Lions or the Packers or San Francisco, you do wonder, like, are they at a coaching disadvantage despite having 2 really good coordinators?
A lot of people have been talking about the Dan Campbell comparison between them because Dan Campbell had his own moments in the NFC Championship game. I think the threat doesn't lie in the NFC. The threat lies in the AFC because when you have to go against Andy Reid, who is the mountaintop, like that's what you want to be, right? If you want to get to the top, you have to get past Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes. I don't know if that is the guy to do it. I don't see the Doug Peterson Philly call against Bill Belichick in Nick Sirianni's bag. I haven't seen him in terms of like a golfer's perspective. He hasn't whipped out that nine iron and hit that shot smooth the entire round, and we're going to trust him to hit that club smooth on the 18th green in a 1-score game. I don't see it, and I think the Jason Garrett comparison, it's there. Like it makes a lot of sense. There's really good coaches in the NFL, and then there's a lot of average coaches in the NFL. There's a lot of decent coaches that get to the Super Bowl, but there's a lot of decent coaches that lose the Super Bowl and never get back there. I don't know if Nick is the guy, but if he proves us all wrong and they're sitting there and they hold a Lombardi trophy at the end of the year, well, I'd love to be proved wrong. But what I've seen the last couple seasons, I'm going to stand on the side of doubt until I see it otherwise.
All right, let's switch things over and talk about the Dallas Cowboys, who are hosting this game with a 3-5 record. What's next for this current version of the Dallas Cowboys? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Pre-Alcohol by Zbiotics. Pre-Alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel great tomorrow. Again, here's the steps. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, maybe you think the Cowboys down by 3 late in the game are going to come back and win, put a bet on the money line. You're going to be able to get all the live lines, all the play-by-play, all the stats that you need on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, we've got a great slate of NFL action in Week 10. There's no better time to join FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Cowboys podcast. Gino, let's talk about the Cowboys, where we're at right now. It's not great. Let's put it out there. It's not great. Dak Prescott, likely going to be out for several weeks. Now, they haven't put him on the injured reserve list yet. I'm assuming that's coming. I've got to believe that he's going to miss at least 6 games. And you wonder, with the Cowboys being at 3-5, where are they going to be at 6 games from now? We are in full evaluation mode for this Cowboys team, unless they win this game against the Eagles. And if they get to be at 4-5 and you start peeking at the back end of the schedule with 2 games still with Washington, another game left with Philadelphia, Carolina, Tampa Bay still on the schedule, maybe you have an outside chance. I don't think we're getting there, though, Gino. I would be shocked.
You are getting Micah Parsons back, though, this week, correct?
That'll help. Yeah, I mean, that'll help. But they still have a lot of issues. So, yes, you get one NFL defensive end back. They're still going to be without DeMarcus Lawrence, Sam Williams, Marshawn Nealon, Deron Bland. They're all pro corners still not playing. It's definitely going to help. But I wonder, as great as Micah Parsons is, what's he going to look like after basically missing the last month with a high ankle sprain? I got to imagine it's going to take him a couple weeks to get up to speed.
I will say this, though, for Cowboys fans, Micah Parsons coming back is probably the best thing, because right now we were without, in practice today, left tackle Fred Johnson, who was already the replacement for Jordan Mailata. He had a leg brace on after taking a low blow in the game against the Jags on the Jalen Hurts touchdown run. Mekhi Becton also held out of practice. We will see if that is just load management or just giving those guys rest days. But this offensive line is already banged up. If there was one game wrecker, I think the Eagles have to say, even Micah at 75%, that's the guy that you have to hone in on, right? Now, I want to ask you, Marcus, if the Eagles were going to have a tough time dealing with the offense of the Cowboys, who is going to be the guy that gives them headaches? And obviously outside of CeeDee Lamb, who, if he plays fully healthy.
And I fully expect CeeDee Lamb to play. Now, he's not going to be 100%. He's dealing with an AC sprain in his shoulder. To me, it's Rico Dowdle. And I know it sounds weird to talk about a running back on the team that's been awful at rushing the ball this year, but Rico Dowdle has actually been pretty good for the Cowboys when they've used him over the last 3 games, averaging over 5 yards per carry. You look at success rate among running backs, which is a very telling sign of which running backs are actually productive in the NFL. He's inside the top 5. As long as Jerry Jones doesn't get in the way and force Ezekiel Elliott on the field, I do think Rico Dowdle can be an effective player in this game because he can make plays after contact. He can be an asset in the receiving game. And whenever you have a backup quarterback on the field, you would need to at least be able to run the ball somewhat well to make it so Cooper Rush doesn't have to throw the ball 50 times in this game. I fully expect the Cowboys to try to run the ball early and often in this game. We'll see if that works.
What is this charade we're doing with Ezekiel Elliott? Like, he wasn't done the last time he was in Dallas. Is this thing going to be coming to an end at some point soon?
I, I think you got a lot of factors here. So I think Mike McCarthy has decided who he wants at running back. I think he would like it to be Rico Dowdle, Hunter Lipke, and then maybe sprinkle in Deuce Vaughn or Dalvin Cook as a guy that gets 2 or 3 touches.
Mhm.
Jerry Jones loves Ezekiel Elliott. Even last week, after Mike McCarthy suspended Ezekiel Elliott, you had Jerry Jones in the tunnel after the game saying, Zeke's a stand-up guy, one of the best leaders on this team. If I only had the mistakes that Zeke has in my track record, I would be sitting really well, right? It's clear that Jerry Jones would like Ezekiel Elliott to be a big part of this backfield. Mike McCarthy disagrees, and I disagree. Like, I was hopeful that Zeke could come in and fill a role as a short yardage running back. It's just clear that even that might be too much for him. There's certainly a struggle for power here between the head coach and the GM. And I actually think Mike McCarthy is going to win out here, right? He's on the final year of his deal.
Mhm.
I think he needs to play players that are going to allow him to explain at a job interview next year why he made these certain decisions, right? If he's playing Zeke, who continues to average 3.3 yards per carry, it's going to be really hard to explain that to other GMs and owners around the league. So I do think Rico's eventually going to win out here and become the guy in this backfield.
That's something we've seen from Howie Roseman in the past, where that loyalty could kind of get in the way. And he did that in the past with Fletcher Cox, who, for the first time in many years, Marcus, we are not going to see Zach Martin
I know.
versus Fletcher Cox. This is a tough one. We're going to see Jalen Carter out there, but is Zach Martin in that offensive line? What's going on with it? Because I know you and Landon have all sorts of concerns with that line right now.
So let's start with the young players. Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe, 2 rookies. I thought Guyton played pretty well last week as a rookie, but they're rookies. Like, they're going to struggle. This is a big time matchup against really good players. Like, we expect them to struggle. The biggest reason why the Cowboys offense has not been the same this year is that their 2 Pro Bowl guards, Tyler Smith and Zach Martin, have both regressed. And I think, Gino, you can explain that because they're both playing next to rookies. In Tyler Smith's case, he's playing with a rookie on either side of him.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Martin just looks old. And this is what happens. He's one of my favorite players. I got a jersey right behind him that he's autographed. This happens to older players. Like, they're not quite the same physically. There was a play last week where on the 3rd down, the Cowboys ran a screen and it was blocked to score a 40-yard touchdown. Zach Martin missed the block, ended up being a 1-yard gain. You kick a field goal rather than scoring a touchdown. That's the difference in a lot of these games. Maybe it's injury related. He showed up on the injury report multiple times this year with a knee and a shoulder. But when you're Zach Martin and you're a 10, 11-year vet, like, this is kind of what we expect.
I said that on our show the other day to Lou, that you want to be one of those guys that the game doesn't pass you by before the game retires you. And to hear you explain that screen, it's like, oh yeah, he should get out to the flat quickly and be able to turn his hips and go. And then all of a sudden they fall off a cliff, right? And I think the youth is the way to go. And what I've been seeing from the Cowboys is Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton are going to be 2 guys that you're going to have to deal with. And I think it's very similar to the setup with the Eagles right now. You move Cam Jurgens inside from that guard position. He's next to Landon Dickerson, who is next to Jordan Mailata. We're seeing that next evolution of hopefully Eagles and Giants greats on the line. And I think at the end of the day, if there's any position, I say at the end of the day all the time, and my fans probably hate it, but it's going to come down to the line play. I mean, can the Eagles, even a little banged up on both sides with Micah Parsons and their line a little banged up, can you stop him? Can the Eagles' run game continue to just force the envelope on the other side of the football? And if I'm the Eagles, I lean right into the run game.
And that's the fear for Dallas, right? Like, if the only chance the Cowboys have in this game is if they can get Philadelphia into 3rd and longs, and that's when Mike Zimmer can throw out his exotic blitzes. Like, they haven't had pass rushers really all year, but you look at some of the pressure rates, and they're actually not terrible, right? They get into 3rd and long, they have a chance. As a Cowboy fan in this game, what I'm going to hate is if every first and second down play is just a run, because they have no chance.
First in the league at first down
Yep.
runs with Kellen Moore by a
Right.
long stretch.
They just don't have the dudes up front to slow down the Eagles. And if Kellen Moore decides to get creative and try to be a more aggressive on first and second down by throwing the ball down the field or just passing the ball more, I honestly think Mike Zimmer will take that all day. So can Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni stay committed and disciplined in the run? If the answer is yes, I think they're going to win this game going away.
I think you have to. And from what we've seen from Saquon Barkley, it's, 3 players of the week in terms of the NFC throughout the first X amount of games. He's absolutely crushing it, going over 100 yards every single game. And right now, he's been the only consistent factor. Somebody who's been out of the Giants lineup in the past due to injuries. He's the one guy in the rotation of Eagles playmakers. Devontae Smith has been out. A.J. Brown has been in and out of the lineup. Dallas Goedert is in and out of the lineup. I think you have to lean on the one guy who is reliable and available for you, and that is a rejuvenated Saquon Barkley, who, if you saw the play of him backwards hurdling a player on the Jags last week, you're probably saying, man, running backs maybe do matter a little bit more. And I think Cowboys fans will love the crop of running backs in this year's draft because there's a few fun ones.
We're already going to get started on some draft coverage over at Locked On Cowboys. And I know Cowboy fans are just waiting for the battle of can you draft a running back inside the top 10? I am not looking forward to that one iota. All right, Gina, let's do some keys to victories for the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is also the only place where you can get an injury insurance policy so your lineup stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Go download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Pick app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. It's a crossover edition of the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, Gina, let's talk about some keys to victory. What are the 3 things the Eagles need to do to secure this win over Dallas?
I'll continue where we just left off. I think, number 1, lean into running the football. Saquon Barkley, he's a guy that he has been efficient in some spots after he gets going. It might take him 1 to 2 to 4 touches to get going, but after a while, he always just hammers home a big run at some point in the second half that is almost backbreaking for a defense. Continue to run the ball. Number 2, possess the ball for a long time. Dallas is going to try and do that against you. You want to limit the amount of possessions this Eagles offense has. Use it against them. Possess the ball. That goes hand in hand with the run game, and it goes into my final one. Be efficient in the red zone. They've gotten down into the red zone a ton. If you look at that Jags game last week, they were able to punch it in, but there's a lot of spots where they're leaving points on the board. Don't allow Dallas to hang around when you leave 8 to 10 points on the board like you did against the Jaguars last week. It came back to bite you against Atlanta, almost came back to bite you last week. But this week against Dallas, I think you know the plan. Stick with the run, possess the football, and punch it in the red zone.
For Dallas, it's really as simple as don't give away yardage. Last week we saw a bunch of dumb penalties, just to say. I mean, they had a 12-man on the field penalty on a 4th and 1. Coming out of halftime, Mike McCarthy is giving an interview that was pre-recorded about how, hey, we need to stay ahead of the chains. We got to stay ahead of the sticks. That's how we win this game. As that interview is playing, Terrence Steele false starts in the first play of the game. Like
Poetry.
When you have a backup quarterback, you can't give away yardage. It's not just penalties. It's making the right plays on special teams. It's not dropping passes, right? You've got to, yards are going to be hard to come by in this game when you have Cooper Rush playing. So don't give away yardage. On defense, you're going to surrender yards. Like Philadelphia is going to move the ball up and down the field, but you have to get stops in the red zone. Make them kick field goals. Make them try to go for it on fourth down. Figure out ways to try to prolong this game. And the number one thing for Dallas is turnovers. Like going into this game, they are just they don't have the talent Philadelphia does. They have injuries. They have massive injuries. The Pro Bowl and all-pro players. But turnovers in the NFL can be the great equalizer, right? And the Cowboys have been awful with turnovers this year. But if you're +2, +3 in the turnover margin this week, that's how you stay alive in these games. So Dallas is probably going to need a lot of turnover luck to win it. But we see it every week. Teams that end up being +2, +3 win games that they shouldn't.
I think it's a great point because if you look at the last 4 victories, Jalen Hurts has not turned the ball over a single time, whether it's an interception nor a fumble. You look at the first 4 games, though, 2-2. He was turning the ball over like he didn't want to hang on to the thing, and he just ate a whole bunch of buttered popcorn. That's the way Dallas has to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
To an extent, they have to be a little bit aggressive on defense, in my opinion. I think you have to make Jalen Hurts read things pre-snap, post-snap, and give him multiple looks. Even though he has been good going through his progressions, he's also very aggressive. He's going to put the ball in spots for his playmakers to make plays, but those are tight window throws where you're off an inch, you're off up or down 1 degree, it could be an interception. So that's how you have to win the game if you're the Cowboys. And I think at the end of the day, there it goes again. I keep saying at the end of the day, it might come down to whoever can be the better kicker in this one. Jake Elliott, he was primed for the last couple seasons. He's been iffy on some of these +50 field goals, hit the upright last week, but Brandon Aubrey, man, like what an absolute freak of an athlete.
Honestly, that's going to be a big on kickoffs, right? If you just down the ball in the end zone, you get it at the 30.
Mm-hmm.
If the Cowboys offense can get 20, 22 yards every drive, you are in Brandon Aubrey field goal range.
Let him kick it.
Yeah, 65-yard field goal. Like he easily has a distance. You're right. Like this could be a game where the field goal kickers matter. Gino, the last thing I want to say is I just wish this game had more juice for Dallas. Like I know it's huge for Philadelphia. They obviously have to win to keep pace for Washington. But as a Cowboy fan, you want these games to matter a lot. And unfortunately, without Dak and with the Cowboys being at 3-5, it just doesn't have the same juice as some of the other Philly Dallas games before. And I know Philly fans that are listening to this don't care at all. It's not quite the same. That's all I had to say.
No, I'm with you. We've only seen Dak versus Jalen one time. Like, are we going to be able to have a series where we're like, oh, it's 4-3? Can this be Jalen Hurts' grudge match to get it back to even? And I think we're going to see that with Jaden Daniels now in the rotation. At least 3 of the 4 teams have it figured out at the quarterback position. Maybe the Giants one day get into this rotation.
Let's hope not.
But I'm with you. I always say, and I think I said this last year on the crossover, like, it's the Joker and Batman. We need each other. Like, we can't live without one another. And the best games are when these teams are the best and they matter the most. I think back to 2018, the game where the field goal or the kickoff goes and 6 Eagles are landing on top of him. There's like, oh, no clear evidence. And it's like that game mattered so much to Philly, and it's so inconsequential in the grand scheme of things.
Or the game last year between Philly and Dallas, right? Like a game that was an awesome game.
Yeah, and it decided the entire race in the NFC East. Like, that's great football. And I know one person who's a little upset about that. That's Jura. He wants to make his money, and he would love for this one to be a nice primetime game. Okay, Marcus, how weird is it that it's on CBS, though?
It is strange. Right?
I don't like it. Eagles Cowboys on CBS. That does not feel.
I know this. Well, to me, this always feel like Sunday afternoon Fox games with Joe Buck.
America game of the week. Yes, every single week.
So that's just, it's different. But maybe CBS will be nice if we get a good game. So we'll see. That is it for this crossover edition of the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Check out Gino and Lou on Locked On Eagles. They do a fantastic job. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosier. You can follow Gino at GC24_football. Check out both shows wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Gino, enjoy the game, and we'll talk later this year.
Appreciate it, Marcus, and go Birds.